The reception hall at Riverside Gardens wasn't the Four Seasons ballroom Mom had envisioned for her daughter's wedding. The venue was elegant but modest. White linens, simple centerpieces, a DJ instead of a live orchestra. For a woman who'd spent 2 years planning what she called the social event of our family's lifetime, the reality of my wedding reception was apparently a profound disappointment. "I can't believe this is what we're settling for," Mom said loudly enough for the guests at 3 nearby tables to hear. She was addressing my Aunt Carol, but her voice carried across the reception hall. "After everything we've invested in Sarah's education and career prospects, this is how she chooses to celebrate her marriage?" I was sitting at the head table with my new husband Michael, trying to enjoy what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Michael squeezed my hand under the table, a gesture that had become familiar over the past 6 months of wedding planning battles. "Linda, it's a lovely reception," Aunt Carol said diplomatically, though she kept glancing around the room as if confirming her assessment. "Lovely." Mom's voice rose with indignation. "Carol, look around. Sarah could have had the ballroom at the Marriott, a 5-course dinner, a string quartet. Instead, we're in a community center eating chicken that probably came from a catering truck." The guests at the surrounding tables were trying to pretend they couldn't hear, but the conversation was becoming impossible to ignore. "And the guest list," Dad chimed in, shaking his head sadly. "Sarah invited her graduate school classmates and work colleagues instead of focusing on family friends and business connections. This reception should have been networking opportunities for her future career." I took a sip of champagne and tried to focus on Michael's quiet conversation with his best man about their upcoming honeymoon plans. "We're embarrassed to be associated with this wedding," Mom announced to what felt like the entire reception hall. "Sarah has a PhD in international relations from Columbia University. She could have married someone from a prominent political family, someone who would advance her career prospects." Dad nodded gravely. "Instead, she marries a high school teacher and throws a budget reception in a community center. It's like she's deliberately sabotaging her potential." The words hit me like cold water. Michael's hand tightened around mine, and I could see the hurt in his eyes despite his attempt to maintain composure. "Mom," I said quietly, "this is my wedding day." "Exactly," she replied. "Your wedding day should reflect your accomplishments and social standing. This reflects someone who's settling for mediocrity." My cousin Jennifer, seated at the family table, tried to change the subject. "Sarah's dress is beautiful. She looks radiant." "The dress is fine," Mom said dismissively, "but Sarah could have worn her grandmother's pearls, the ones that have been in our family for 4 generations. Instead, she's wearing simple earrings she probably bought online." I touched the pearl earrings Michael had given me for our first anniversary. Modest but meaningful, chosen because he knew I preferred understated jewelry. "And the venue," Dad continued, warming to the criticism. "Sarah works for the State Department. She should have connections who could have arranged something more prestigious. Instead, we're celebrating in the same hall where the community holds bake sales." Michael finally spoke up. "Mr. Anderson, Sarah chose this venue because it's where we had our first dance. It's meaningful to us." "Meaningful doesn't advance careers, Michael," Dad replied. "Sarah needs to think strategically about her public image." Mom nodded emphatically. "Exactly. Sarah's colleagues from the State Department are here tonight. What must they think about her judgment and priorities?" I looked around the reception hall at the faces I cared about most. Michael's family, my graduate school friends, colleagues from work who had become genuine friends. Everyone seemed to be having a wonderful time except for my parents, who were treating my wedding like a failed business networking event. "The cake," Mom continued, apparently not finished with her public critique. "Sarah chose a simple 3-layer cake from a local bakery instead of something from one of the city's premier wedding cake designers." "It's delicious," Aunt Carol said, taking another bite. "It's adequate," Mom corrected. "Sarah's wedding cake should have been extraordinary. This entire reception should have been extraordinary." My phone, tucked in the small purse beside my chair, buzzed quietly. I glanced at it, a text from someone listed only as NC duty officer. I ignored it. "Look at Jennifer's wedding last year," Dad said, gesturing toward my cousin. "Country club venue, 200 guests, live music, 5-course dinner. That's how you celebrate a marriage when you understand the importance of social positioning." "Jennifer's wedding was lovely," I said, "but this is our wedding." Michael and I wanted something intimate and personal. Personal doesn't build professional networks, Mom said. Sarah, you're 31 years old. You should understand by now that every social event is an opportunity to advance your career and establish your status. My phone buzzed again. This time I glanced more carefully. Urgent. Presidential briefing moved to 8 p.m. I frowned. That didn't make sense. I wasn't scheduled for any briefings this weekend and certainly not on my wedding day. And honestly, Mom continued, I don't understand why Sarah is working for the government anyway. With her credentials, she could be working for a consulting firm making 3 times her current salary. Government work is noble, Michael said defensively. Government work is a waste of talent, Dad replied. Sarah spends her days writing policy memos that probably get filed away and forgotten. She could be working for corporations or think tanks where her analysis would actually influence decision makers. My phone buzzed a third time. I discreetly checked the message. Dr. Anderson, please confirm availability for emergency NSC briefing at 8 p.m. Presidential directive requires your immediate participation. That got my attention. The National Security Council didn't make mistakes about personnel availability, especially for presidential directives. Excuse me, I said quietly to Michael, I need to make a quick phone call. Sarah, Mom said sharply, you're not taking work calls during your wedding reception. It's probably just a colleague congratulating us, I said standing up. I'll be right back. I walked toward the reception hall's lobby, dialing the number for the NSC duty office. This is Dr. Anderson, I said when someone answered. I received urgent messages about a briefing tonight. Dr. Anderson, the voice was crisp and professional. Thank you for responding. We have a developing situation in Eastern Europe that requires immediate analysis from our Russia specialists. The President has requested a full briefing by 8 p.m. I'm at my wedding reception, I said quietly. We understand and we apologize for the timing. However, this is classified as a national security priority. We've arranged for secure transportation to bring you to the White House immediately. I looked back through the doorway at the reception hall, where Mom was still holding court about the inadequacies of my wedding choices. How long will the briefing last? Approximately 2 hours. We can have you back to your reception by 10 p.m. if you prefer, though most emergency NSC briefings run longer. I thought about the situation. Mom and Dad were already disappointed in everything about my wedding. Leaving for a work emergency would probably confirm their worst assumptions about my career priorities. I'll be there, I said. Where should I meet the transportation? A motorcade will arrive at Riverside Gardens in 15 minutes. Look for Special Agent Martinez. She'll escort you to the secure vehicle. A motorcade? Standard protocol for emergency NSC briefings involving classified intelligence. Dr. Anderson, please pack any personal items you might need. This briefing could extend beyond the initial 2-hour estimate. I returned to the reception hall and approached Michael at the head table. Michael, I said quietly, I have to leave for about 2 hours. Work emergency. His face fell. Sarah, it's our wedding day. I know and I'm sorry. It's a national security situation. I'll be back as quickly as possible. Sarah, Mom said, having overheard our conversation, you are not leaving your wedding reception for work. It's an emergency briefing. I don't have a choice. Of course you have a choice, Dad said. You choose to prioritize a government job that clearly doesn't respect appropriate boundaries. Before I could respond, the reception hall doors opened and 3 people in dark suits entered. They moved with the unmistakable precision of federal security personnel, scanning the room professionally before approaching our table. Dr. Sarah Anderson? The lead agent was a woman in her 40s with an earpiece and the kind of alert posture that immediately identified her as Secret Service. Yes, I said, aware that every conversation in the reception hall had stopped. Special Agent Martinez, United States Secret Service. Dr. Anderson, the President is ready for your national security briefing. We have secure transportation standing by. The reception hall went completely silent. 50 wedding guests holding plates of cake and glasses of champagne, all staring at the Secret Service agents who had just walked into my reception. National security briefing? Mom's voice came out as a whisper. Dr. Anderson works as a Russia specialist for the National Security Council. Special Agent Martinez explained to the room in general. She provides intelligence analysis and policy recommendations on Eastern European affairs directly to the president and senior administration officials. Dad was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Sarah works for the National Security Council? Senior intelligence analyst, Special Agent Martinez continued. Dr. Anderson's expertise on Russian political and military strategy makes her essential for briefings involving Eastern European security threats. But, Mom said weakly, Sarah said she works for the State Department. I work for the National Security Council, which coordinates with State Department personnel, I said. Most of my work is classified, so I usually just tell people I work in government foreign policy analysis. Michael was looking at me with amazement. Sarah, you never told me you briefed the president. I brief the National Security Advisor who briefs the president. Sometimes I participate in larger briefings when my expertise is specifically needed. Special Agent Martinez checked her watch. Dr. Anderson, we need to depart immediately. The president is waiting for your analysis of the developing situation in Ukraine. Ukraine? And Carol said. Sarah, you work on Ukraine policy? Among other things, I said, gathering my purse. I analyze Russian strategic decision-making and its implications for U.S. foreign policy. Dr. Anderson, Special Agent Martinez continued, addressing the room, is one of the government's leading experts on Russian political psychology and military doctrine. Her analysis influences major foreign policy decisions. The wedding guests were staring at me in complete silence. Michael, I said, I'll be back as soon as possible. Go, he said, standing to kiss me. This is incredible, Sarah. I'm proud of you. As I walked toward the reception hall exit with the Secret Service detail, I could hear Mom saying to Dad, she briefs the president. Our daughter briefs the President of the United States. The motorcade was exactly what you'd expect from a presidential security detail. 3 black SUVs with tinted windows, additional security vehicles, and enough firepower to handle any conceivable threat. As we drove through the city toward the White House, Special Agent Martinez briefed me on the situation. Russian military movements near the Ukrainian border have accelerated in the past 6 hours, she explained. The president needs your assessment of whether this represents an imminent invasion threat or strategic positioning for diplomatic leverage. Have we confirmed the specific units involved? I asked, switching into analysis mode. That's part of what you'll be briefing. CIA has satellite intelligence, NSA has communications intercepts, and Defense Intelligence has tactical assessments. Your job is to synthesize the intelligence and provide strategic context. The White House Situation Room was exactly as secure and high-tech as I'd expected, filled with screens displaying real-time intelligence from around the world. The National Security Advisor was there along with senior officials from Defense, State, CIA, and the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Dr. Anderson, the National Security Advisor said as I entered, thank you for coming in. I know this disrupts your wedding celebration. Not a problem, sir. What's the current intelligence picture? For the next 3 hours I analyzed satellite imagery, communications intercepts, and tactical reports to assess Russian intentions and recommend U.S. policy responses. The situation was complex. Russian military exercises that could either be routine training or preparation for actual military action against Ukraine. Dr. Anderson, the Secretary of Defense said during the briefing, your analysis suggests this is primarily diplomatic signaling rather than invasion preparation? Based on the unit compositions and positioning, yes. The Russians are demonstrating capability without committing to action. This appears designed to influence ongoing diplomatic negotiations rather than prepare for immediate military operations. Your confidence level on that assessment? 75%. The alternative scenario, actual invasion preparation, would require different tactical deployments that we're not seeing in the current intelligence. The president joined us via secure video link for the final hour of the briefing. Dr. Anderson, he said, your analysis has been crucial for our understanding of Russian strategic thinking. How should we respond to this latest demonstration? Mr. President, I recommend measured diplomatic engagement that acknowledges Russian concerns while maintaining firm support for Ukrainian sovereignty. The goal is to de-escalate tensions without appearing to reward threatening behavior. And if your assessment is wrong? If this is actual invasion preparation? Then we'll see additional tactical indicators within the next 48 hours. I recommend maintaining heightened intelligence surveillance and preparing response options while pursuing diplomatic engagement. The briefing concluded at 11:30 p.m. As I rode back to Riverside Gardens, I reflected on the surreal experience of analyzing international crises while wearing my wedding dress. When I returned to the reception hall, I found that most of the guests had stayed, apparently fascinated by the idea of a wedding interrupted by presidential national security briefings. The conversation had completely shifted from Mom's critiques of my wedding choices to amazement about my actual career. Sarah. Michael approached immediately. How was the briefing? Classified, I said with a smile, but the situation is stable. My daughter, Mom said, appearing beside us with tears in her eyes, briefs the President of the United States on national security issues. Sometimes yes. And we've been criticizing your career choices, Dad said, looking embarrassed. Sarah, I owe you an enormous apology. Dad, you didn't know what I actually do. Most of my work is classified. But we should have asked better questions, Mom said. We should have tried to understand your work instead of assuming it was unimportant. Jennifer approached our group. Sarah, my cousin works for the National Security Council and gets picked up by the Secret Service during her wedding reception. This is the most amazing family story ever. The most amazing career, Aunt Carol corrected. Sarah is literally helping to shape foreign policy. As the reception finally wound down around midnight, Mom pulled me aside. Sarah, I need to apologize for everything I said earlier tonight. Mom, you were disappointed about the wedding reception. I understand. No, you don't understand. I was embarrassed by what I thought were modest choices that reflected poorly on our family's status. Now I realize you made thoughtful choices about what mattered to you while managing one of the most important jobs in government. The wedding was perfect, I said. Michael and I got to celebrate with the people we care about most. Including Secret Service agents who interrupted to brief you on international crises, Mom said with amazement. That part wasn't planned, I admitted. Sarah, can I ask you something? Of course. Are you happy? With your career, your marriage, the choices you've made? I looked around the reception hall where Michael was saying goodbye to his family, where my friends from graduate school were discussing international relations with newfound respect, where my parents were finally understanding the work I'd been doing for years. Mom, I wake up every morning knowing that my analysis helps protect American interests and potentially prevents international conflicts. I married someone who supports my career and understands the importance of public service. I couldn't be happier. Even though we criticized your choices? Especially because you were willing to change your minds when you learned the full picture. 6 months later, my analysis of Russian strategic intentions proved accurate. The military exercises were indeed diplomatic signaling, and tensions de-escalated through careful negotiation. Mom kept a framed photo of me being escorted by Secret Service agents on her mantelpiece, apparently as proud of that moment as she was embarrassed by her earlier criticism. At our first anniversary dinner, Michael raised his champagne glass. To Sarah, who turned our wedding reception into a national security briefing and somehow made it the most memorable celebration possible. To families who learned to understand each other, I replied. And to marriages strong enough to survive presidential emergencies, Mom added, joining our toast. Looking back on that day, I realized that the best weddings aren't necessarily the most expensive or elaborate. They're the ones where you learn something important about the people you love, and they learn something important about you. Even if it takes the Secret Service showing up to make that learning possible.
Hi, I'm Pamela. This was the kind of weekend I've been dreaming about for months. My soon-to-be in-laws had invited everyone to their sprawling countryside estate for a relaxed family gathering. The scent of fresh air, the creak of aged wooden floors, and the towering oak tree in the yard whispered decades of family stories. It was idyllic, a perfect setting for the next chapter of my life. I stood in the main hall, sunlight streaming through dusty windows, as my friend Lisa admired my engagement ring. Her eyes widened with delight. "Oh, Pamela, it's stunning. Jack has such good taste," she gushed. I laughed, warmth filling my chest. He does. I can't wait to start this new chapter with him. Jenna, a college friend, joined us, a glass of champagne in hand. "So have you picked out the dress yet?" Before I could answer, Lisa practically squealed, She has. Jenna, it's breathtaking. You'll die when you see it. Their excitement was infectious. Between laughter and wedding talk, I excused myself to grab refreshments from the kitchen. As I neared the door, the hum of voices stopped me in my tracks. Clara and Beth, my soon-to-be mother-in-law and sister-in-law. My first instinct was to step in and say hello, but the sharp edge in their tone made me hesitate. She's absolutely not fit for this family, Beth hissed. Clara sighed deeply. I don't understand what Jack sees in her either, but what can we do? The wedding's practically here. Emma would have been perfect, Beth muttered. She's beautiful, wealthy, and from the right circles. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. Emma? Who was Emma? Clara's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. You're still planning on spilling red wine on her dress, aren't you? Beth chuckled darkly. That's a classic, but no. I got something better in mind. What if we tampered with the wedding cake? Imagine the chaos if everyone got sick. The calculated malice in her tone sent a chill down my spine. Clara mused, or perhaps I could chat with Mrs. Patterson during the ceremony. A little nudge about Pamela's past, and she'll create a scene for sure. Their laughter filled the kitchen, cold and cruel. My heart pounded, a lump forming in my throat. How could they? Why? Retreating silently, I returned to Lisa and Jenna, my face pale. They immediately noticed. Pamela, what's wrong? Lisa asked, her voice full of concern. I hesitated before telling them everything. Their reactions mirrored my own. Jenna's eyes flashed with fury. Those witches. Who does that? Lisa grabbed my hand, her grip firm. We're not letting them get away with this, Pamela. A sense of determination settled within me. They think I'm an easy target, but they're in for a surprise. Our conversation stretched into the night, plans forming amidst the shock. I wasn't alone. Whatever Clara and Beth had planned, I had my friends by my side, ready to fight back. When I returned to my childhood home the next day, the memory of their laughter still haunted me, biting at my peace. I needed more support, and there was no one better than Sasha and Mia to confide in. As the evening sun bathed my living room in gold, I poured my heart out. You're telling us Clara and Beth are sabotaging your wedding? Maya asked, her expression a mixture of disbelief and outrage. Sasha slammed her coffee mug onto the table. Those snakes. Who do they think they are? I don't know, I admitted, my voice trembling. What do I do? It's my wedding, and the thought of someone deliberately trying to ruin it. My voice trembled under the weight of betrayal. Mia took my hand, her eyes fierce with determination. We're going to make sure they don't get their way. You're not facing this alone, Pamela. We've got your back. Always. We spent hours in Mia's apartment, strategizing. Sasha, ever the planner, had a notebook open, jotting down ideas. All right, Pamela, we need a game plan, she said, tapping her pen. If Clara and Beth are planning to pull something at the wedding, we'll need eyes on them at all times. We can take shifts to ensure they don't cause any mischief. Mia nodded. And it's not just during the wedding. We need to be vigilant before it too. Your dress, the cake, everything could be a target. The next morning, over brunch at our favorite coffee shop, I filled Jack in. His expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. My mother and sister? Really, Pamela? Are you sure? Believe me, I wish I weren't, I said, my voice quiet. I overheard them at the house. Jack ran a hand through his hair, his brow furrowed. Okay, I trust you. I'll keep an eye on them, but you're certain they're planning something for the wedding? I'm certain. Mia and Sasha are helping too. He sighed, his shoulders heavy with the weight of it all. This is overwhelming. But we'll get through it. Together. Later that evening, the three of us dove into research at Mia's apartment. The warm glow of her desk lamp illuminated the scattered papers and open laptops. We combed through articles on wedding sabotage and scrutinized Clara and Beth's social media profiles. Sasha's eyes lit up with an idea. What if we gather evidence, like a recording of them plotting? It could come in handy if we need to confront them. It's risky, Mia agreed, but worth it. We just need to catch one of their schemes on tape. Armed with a discreet voice recorder, I visited Clara and Beth's house under the guise of a routine stop. Following Mia and Sasha's careful coaching, I planted the device where it would pick up their conversation. To our relief, it worked. The recording captured every detail of their schemes, including a new plan to switch the seating arrangements at the reception to cause chaos. Hearing their voices solidified my resolve. With this evidence, I felt a renewed sense of strength. To allies, Sasha said, raising an imaginary toast. And to ensuring your big day goes off without a hitch. The sun rose on my wedding day, its rays spilling over the beautiful garden venue. Fairy lights twinkled in the soft morning breeze. But instead of feeling nervous, I was determined. In the bridal suite, Sasha and Mia stood beside me in their elegant bridesmaid dresses. As I adjusted my veil in the mirror, Mia smirked, holding a glass of red wine. "Don't even joke with that," I said, giggling nervously. "Relax," Maya replied with a wink. "This isn't for you. It's for Beth." Moments later, Beth approached with a suspiciously sweet smile, a glass of red wine clutched a little too tightly in her hand. "Congrats, Pamela," she said, her voice dripping with insincerity. As she passed by, her arm swayed deliberately toward my pristine white dress. But Mia was quicker. She bumped into Beth just in time, spilling the drink all over Beth's pale pink dress instead. "Oh my. So clumsy of me," Mia said, her tone a perfect mix of mock apology and mischief. Beth's face turned a deep shade of crimson, matching the wine now soaking her dress. "Mia, watch where you're going." Mia smiled slyly. "Oops." I stifled a laugh as Sasha whispered, "Round one to us." But the battle wasn't over. Clara, elegantly dressed, moved among the guests, her voice soft but insidious. I noticed some guests casting furtive glances my way, their expressions uncertain. My Aunt Lisa approached, her brow furrowed. "Pamela, is it true what Clara's been saying about you?" I took a deep breath, ready to respond, but Sasha stepped in. "Don't believe a word, Aunt Lisa. Clara's been stirring the pot all day, and it's all nonsense." Relief washed over my aunt's face. I thought so. She seemed far too eager to share her gossip. Sasha made quick work of briefing a few other key family members, shutting down Clara's rumors before they could take root. The focus shifted back to the joyous occasion. The ceremony itself was magical. Under a canopy of greenery and twinkling fairy lights, Jack and I exchanged vows. Surrounded by the love of our friends and family, nothing else mattered. The sabotages felt like a distant memory. As the evening wore on and the reception came alive with music and laughter, I couldn't help but smile. Feeling just a touch vindictive, I discreetly played the recording of Clara and Beth scheming for a few close family members. The range of expressions on their faces was satisfying. Shock, disgust, and disbelief rippled through the room. Jake, usually the family's light-hearted jokester, was uncharacteristically serious. "I can't believe it stooped so low." Lucy, my cousin, shook her head in disbelief. "That's just inexcusable." Word spread quickly. Though no one openly confronted them, the chilly reception Clara and Beth received was undeniable. The once chatty pair suddenly found themselves ignored, avoided, and treated like pariahs in their own family gathering. Sasha leaned in, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "Justice served, Pamela, and in the best way possible." I smiled, feeling a lightness I hadn't felt in weeks. The rest of the evening was filled with dancing, laughter, and love. As Jack twirled me around on the dance floor, the worries and plots of Clara and Beth felt like a distant storm, leaving behind a breathtaking rainbow in its wake. The rhythmic sound of waves crashing against the shore mirrored the steady beat of my heart. Here I was in paradise, a stunning beach resort with Jack by my side. Sitting on the balcony of our honeymoon suite, a drink in hand, I let myself breathe in the beauty of the horizon stretching endlessly before us. Jack turned to me, his expression serious, tinged with regret. "You know, I've been thinking about everything that happened. Pamela, I'm so sorry I doubted you." I looked into his eyes, seeing the sincerity of his words. "It's okay, Jack. I get it. It's hard to believe your own family would do something like that." He took a deep breath, his voice heavy with emotion. "I'm just grateful you had the courage to stand up to them. Honestly, I can't imagine how our wedding would have turned out if it hadn't been for you and Sasha and Mia." A soft smile tugged at my lips. "We do make a pretty good team, don't we?" He chuckled, his tone lighter. "That's an understatement." As we sat there enjoying the serenity, my phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Aunt Lisa. "Hey Pamela, just wanted to let you know that news about Clara and Beth has spread. Most of the family is furious. Good on you for handling everything so gracefully. Enjoy your honeymoon." Soon after, more messages poured in from friends and family, some expressing shock, others admiration for how I had handled the ordeal. It seems Clara and Beth are finally getting a taste of their own medicine. I mused, scrolling through the messages. Jack nodded. They brought it on themselves. Actions have consequences. The rest of the day was blissful. We explored the resort, indulged in spa treatments, and savored exquisite cuisines. But the best part of it all was simply being with Jack, knowing we had weathered a storm together and emerged stronger. That evening, as we strolled hand in hand along the beach, the cool sand under our feet, I found myself reflecting on everything. The sting of betrayal, the anxiety of the unknown, the relief of having allies, and the sweetness of triumph. Each moment was like a bead on a necklace, threading together the story of our wedding. Jack squeezed my hand, pulling me out of my thoughts. "What's on your mind?" I smiled up at him. "Just how lucky I am, not just for escaping Clara and Beth's schemes, but for having friends like Sasha and Mia, and for having you." He leaned in, brushing a kiss against my forehead. "I'm the lucky one, Pamela. For your strength, your resilience, and the love you've brought into my life." We spent the rest of the night lying on beach chairs under a canopy of stars. The past felt like a distant memory, a storm we had overcome together. Raising my glass, I whispered a quiet toast to the horizon, where the vast sea met the endless sky. "To us," I said softly. It was a toast to love, friendship, and the sweet taste of victory. What do you think? Do people like Clara and Beth deserve second chances, or are some actions unforgivable? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Hi, I'm Kayla, and trust me, you're going to want to hear this. My sister-in-law tried to steal my babies before they were even born. Yes, you heard that right. Let me take you back to where it all began. My husband James and I had been trying for a baby for 3 long years. Those years were filled with heartbreak, countless fertility treatments, and more needles than I cared to count. Through it all, his sister Amy was our biggest cheerleader. Amy had always been open about her struggles with infertility due to complications from endometriosis, so she seemed to truly empathize with us. "You're going to be the best mom, Kayla," she'd say, bringing over fertility-boosting smoothies and even tracking my ovulation cycle with almost obsessive dedication. "I just know it's going to happen soon." When we finally got the news that I was pregnant, with twins, no less, Amy was the first person we told. She burst into tears, pulling me into a hug so tight I could barely breathe. "This is perfect," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. 2 babies, 1 for each arm." Looking back, there was something off in her expression, but in that moment, I was too overjoyed to notice. James and I were ecstatic. His parents, Linda and Robert, couldn't contain their excitement either. Linda began knitting tiny baby blankets, while Robert started planning the nursery's renovation. They lived just a few blocks away, so family dinners quickly became baby prep central. Everything seemed perfect until my 4th month. That's when Amy started showing up to every single doctor's appointment. At first, I thought it was sweet. If I was just in the area, she'd say, somehow always arriving moments before my name was called. Besides, I want to learn everything about my little niece or nephew. But soon, her behavior shifted from supportive to unsettling. She began asking strange questions during the appointments. "Dr. Santos, hypothetically, how would a surrogate handle the birth certificate? Or, what documents would a biological mother need to prove the babies are hers?" Dr. Santos, my OB/GYN, remained professional, but I noticed her giving Emmy odd looks. James, meanwhile, was too busy with work. He's a software developer with tight deadlines to witness these red flags. Then, one day, Amy showed up with a thick folder of paperwork. "Just some information about my health history," she said nonchalantly. "You know, in case the babies inherit anything from our side of the family." That word, however, began slipping into her vocabulary more frequently, as though the twins were partially hers. She touched my growing belly without asking and even told strangers she was finally going to be a mother. I tried talking to James about her bizarre behavior, but he brushed it off. "She's just excited about being an aunt," he said. If only we'd known what was really happening. At my 6-month checkup, everything unraveled. The nurse kept giving me strange looks as she reviewed my chart, then called Dr. Santos over for a whispered conversation. "Mrs. Harrison," Dr. Santos said cautiously, "there seems to be some confusion in your records." "What do you mean?" I asked, my stomach nodding. She frowned at her computer screen. We have duplicate files, one listing you as the mother and another showing you as a surrogate for Amy Harrison. My heart stopped. What? That's impossible. These are my babies. Amy is my sister-in-law, nothing more. Dr. Santos hesitated, then pulled up more documents. There are signed surrogacy agreements here, she said. They're dated before your pregnancy. The signatures look legitimate. My hands shook as I stared at the screen. But I never signed anything. There wasn't a surrogacy arrangement. I was trembling as I called James, my voice barely steady. You need to hear this. Before James could make it to the hospital, Amy had already started her performance. That evening, I walked into my in-laws' house to find Linda and Robert sitting on the couch, their faces grim, while Amy sobbed dramatically into her hands. The moment she saw me, her head snapped up, and she screamed, "How could you try to steal my babies?" I froze in shock as she continued, "You agreed to be my surrogate. We have all the paperwork. You're just trying to keep them because you got attached." James arrived moments later, stepping into a room already thick with tension. His parents were consoling Amy, their eyes flicking toward me like I was some kind of monster. "Show him the papers," Amy, Linda urged. "Show your brother the truth." With a triumphant look, Amy pulled out the folder I'd seen her carrying before. Now I understood what it truly contained. Surrogacy agreements, medical records, even emails supposedly between us discussing the arrangement. Every page was fake, every word forged. But to an untrained eye, it all looked legitimate. James stared at the documents, his brow furrowed. "Kayla would never agree to this without telling me," he said, his voice steady but tinged with doubt. Amy pounced on that hesitation. "I'm protecting my babies," she cried, pulling out even more papers. "Look at these ultrasound records. They're listed under my name. Ask anyone at the hospital. I have copies of everything." Robert, usually the quiet one, spoke up. "There must be some reasonable explanation. Kayla, did you perhaps agree to this during your fertility struggles and change your mind?" "No," I shouted, my voice trembling with fury. "She's lying. She forged everything." But Amy had done her homework. Every document appeared flawless, every signature an exact match. She'd even altered hospital records. I watched helplessly as my in-laws' expressions shifted from concern to suspicion. "I think Kayla should stay somewhere else until we sort this out," Linda suggested quietly, avoiding my eyes. "For everyone's safety. She's not going anywhere," James snapped, his voice sharp and unwavering. "These are our babies. I was there for every fertility treatment, every negative test, every moment of hope and heartbreak." He turned to his sister, his tone softening but still firm. "Amy, you're not well." But the damage was done. The seeds of doubt had been planted. That night, as we drove home, James was unusually quiet. The moment we got through the door, he pulled out his laptop and started digging through old emails and documents. "I'm going to figure out how she did this," he promised. "There has to be a trail." I placed my hands protectively over my belly, feeling the twins kick. They knew who their real mother was, even if the rest of the family was starting to question it. Around 3 a.m., James suddenly sat up straight, staring at his screen. "The metadata is wrong," he whispered. "Amy backdated everything, but she messed up the file properties. These documents were all created 2 weeks ago." It was the first crack in her perfect plan. James called in sick to work the next morning and continued his investigation. Amy had overlooked one crucial detail. James worked in cybersecurity. By midday, he turned to me with a triumphant look. "I got into her cloud storage," he said. "Look at this folder. Hospital templates." She downloaded official letterheads and forms. There's even a Photoshop tutorial on document forgery in her recent files. My hands clenched into fists. "Can we prove it's her computer?" "Better," James said, a grim smile on his face. "Her browsing history shows searches for how to hack hospital records and surrogacy agreement templates. She wasn't even trying to hide it." While James gathered digital evidence, I called Dr. Santos. She'd been reviewing security footage from the clinic. "Mrs. Harrison," she said, her voice tense, "we found something disturbing. There's video of your sister-in-law accessing the nurse's station computer when staff were busy. She had several flash drives with her." The truth was unraveling fast. One of the nurses even recognized Amy, not from my appointments, but from another hospital where she used to volunteer. She was fired, the nurse revealed. She tried to access patient records. They kept it quiet to avoid a scandal. Armed with this new evidence, we went to Linda and Robert. James presented everything. The security footage, the file metadata, the browsing history. But Amy was ready with a counterattack. "She's trying to frame me," Amy shouted, pacing the living room. "James works in cybersecurity. He could have faked all of this." Linda wrung her hands. "I just don't understand why either of you would lie about this." "Maybe we should look into Amy's past more carefully," Robert said quietly. "The nurse's story about the other hospital." "You're all against me," Amy screamed, her face twisting with rage. "Fine. I have more proof, messages from the fertility clinic." She grabbed her laptop and started typing furiously, but in her panic, she clicked the wrong folder. Suddenly, the TV screen, connected to her laptop via an HDMI cable, lit up. Dozens of files appeared, labeled Kayla's medical records. "Edit these." The room went silent. Amy slammed the laptop shut, but it was too late. We'd all seen it. Every forged document, every fake email, every step of her twisted plan laid bare. "I just wanted to be a mother," she whispered, her voice cracking. "They're supposed to be mine. I did everything right. I tracked her cycle, went to every appointment, planned everything perfectly. They're mine." Linda started crying. Robert looked exhausted. James put his arm around me protectively and spoke softly but firmly. "Get help, Amy, before we have to get the police involved." Looking at Amy's face, that unsettling mixture of desperation and calculation, I knew this wasn't over. She still had one more card to play, and I had a sinking feeling it would be her most dangerous move yet. Her final act of desperation came 2 days later. Amy attempted to access the hospital's records department using a fake employee ID, intending to replace my real medical files with her forged versions. Security caught her in the act, and the hospital immediately pressed charges. The subsequent investigation unraveled everything, not just the forged documents and hacked records, but a disturbing history of similar incidents. Amy had been fired from 3 different hospitals for attempting to access confidential patient files. There was even a restraining order from a former coworker whose ultrasound photos Amy had stolen, claiming they were her own. "She needs a psychiatric evaluation," the detective told us. This pattern of behavior points to deeper, underlying issues. The court-mandated mental health assessment diagnosed Amy with severe attachment disorder and delusional behavior. The judge ordered her to undergo mandatory treatment and sentenced her to 5 years of probation. She was also permanently banned from working in or volunteering at any medical facility. James attended every court session, watching his sister's carefully constructed lies crumble under the weight of evidence. "I should have seen it," he kept saying, guilt written across his face. All those years, her strange behaviors, the red flags we ignored. Linda and Robert struggled with their own guilt. They had nearly helped Amy steal their own grandchildren. During a tearful family dinner, Linda admitted, "We failed both of our children. We ignored Amy's problems for so long, and then we doubted you, Kayla. I don't know how we can ever make it right." I looked at them holding our twins for the first time. "By being there for your grandchildren," I said softly, "by helping us make sure they grow up understanding what real family loyalty means." Emma and Ethan were born 2 weeks early but perfectly healthy. Their birth certificates, listing James and me as their parents, were verified and triple-checked by hospital administration. Amy wasn't allowed within 100 yards of the hospital during my delivery. From the moment they arrived, my in-laws threw themselves into grandparent duties as if making up for lost time. Robert meticulously baby-proofed our entire house, while Linda stocked our freezer with months of home-cooked meals. James, ever the protector, fortified all our medical and legal records with extra layers of security. "No one's ever going to question our family again," he promised one evening, watching Emma and Ethan sleep peacefully in their nursery. Through family friends, we heard that Amy had moved across the country after completing her initial treatment. She sent one letter to her parents, acknowledging she needed help and was committed to continuing therapy. James refused to read it, but I did. "I lost myself in a fantasy," she wrote, "and I nearly destroyed the people I loved the most." Today, the twins are celebrating their first birthday. Our house is filled with family, friends, and the sounds of laughter. Linda and Robert are holding Emma and Ethan's hands, guiding them as they take their first toddling steps. Across the room, James catches my eye and smiles. That same warm smile that made me fall in love with him years ago. We made it through the storm. Stronger. Our family isn't perfect, but it's real. Every smile, every tear, every sleepless night. It's all authentically ours. And no one can forge the kind of love that binds us together. What would you do if a family member tried to steal your children using forged documents? Would you press charges like we did, or handle it privately through mental health intervention? Let us know in the comments. If you or someone you know is dealing with toxic family dynamics, share this story. Sometimes it helps to know you're not alone in facing impossible situations with the people who should love you most. See you in the next video.